Madison Scarpino is outside Kyle Busch's racing team headquarters in Welcome, North Carolina, and she has the latest on all of this for us. Hello, Madison.
Hello, Sandra. Yeah, Busch spent a ton of time here. It's where they set up the race cars each week. It's where they would hold team meetings and more. But now there is a growing memorial for the NASCAR legend. You can see people leaving flowers, notes, leaving M&Ms. Many people know about his M&M car, as his sponsorship with the candy company is one of the most iconic in NASCAR's history. And fans here are absolutely devastated by his sudden death.
It was like a shock to the sport. You're not really ready for it. But he's one of the greats. He's going to be remembered for the end of time.
So we don't have many details on Busch's death other than his family saying he was hospitalized earlier this week with a severe illness. We know about a 911 call you guys said we would hear. Sources say that he was in a simulator when he was unresponsive Wednesday. And just weeks ago, he did appear to be ill at a race in New York, reportedly suffering with a sinus cold, and even radioed his team for a doctor. Busch's career lasting more than 20 years. If you combine all the NASCAR series, he won a record-breaking 234 races, more than any other driver in history. And his family, NASCAR, and his racing team say he was a rare talent. He wasn't just known for his gutsy driving, but also his unapologetic personality. He had some awesome post-game interviews. He was competitive, hilarious. This is him after a win in 2018, mocking the crowd booing him after one of his many controversial final laps. And this side of him is what many people are going to miss the most. Just 1 week ago, he won his final race, and knowing the situation now, what he said afterwards is gut-wrenching.
Because you never know when the last one is,
Yeah, so the reporter asked him why these moments never get old. That was his response, but he leaves behind a beautiful wife, an 11-year-old son, a 4-year-old daughter who, based on his social media, were his absolute world. And again, he was just 41 years old. Back to you guys.
So incredibly sad. Madison, thank you. All right, John?
All right, let's bring in Dr. Marc Siegel, Fox News senior medical analyst. He's on the phone with us. We are getting this turned around. TMZ, which is another property owned by the Fox News Corporation, obtained the 911 call that was made on Wednesday after Kyle Busch became somewhat unresponsive when he was in that simulator. I listened to it. Basically what it said, Doc, was it was a person who didn't really seem to have a tremendous sense of urgency in their voice, asking for paramedics to come out, that a person, didn't mention Kyle Busch by name, was on the bathroom floor having difficulty breathing and coughing up some blood. That's all we know at this point. What does that suggest to you?
Well, if you add, John, to that the fact that we know that he was dealing with some kind of sinus problem previously, to me it suggests number one on the list would be the possibility that whatever he had progressed to pneumonia. With pneumonia, you see coughing up blood and struggling to breathe. If that wasn't fully treated or properly diagnosed, that would be the first thing that comes to my mind, because we know about the sinus infection. Another thing that can cause you to cough up blood is a blood clot, a pulmonary embolus, and that can cause sudden death. So those would be the two main things. But it seems like when you add to this picture that he's coughing up blood and then becomes unresponsive, that this is a primary respiratory problem, a problem with his lungs.
Dr. Siegel, we now have that 911 audio. We're going to play it out. Listen.
And what's your name? And tell me exactly what's happened.
I've got an individual that's shortness of breath, very hot, thinks he's going to pass out, and is producing a little bit of blood, coughing up some blood.
Okay, and how old is this person? Male or female? And is he awake?
He is awake. He's awake. He's on the bathroom floor right now.
Okay.
So when you come in, if you could not make it, can you turn the sirens off?
Yeah, that's fine.
When you get here, and so when you come into the main entrance of the building, the closest way to get to him is if you go to the left. Like you'll come in and the parking lot splits to the right or the left. Just tell them to go to the left. I'll be out here waiting on them, and I'll flag them down. There's a side door further down the side of the building that I'll be there waiting on them.
got him coming out there. Just nothing else for him to eat or drink. And if he gets worse in any way before they get there, just call us back. What was the exact name of your business back there?
It's called the General Motors Charlotte Technical Center. It's off of Speedway Boulevard. It's close to. It's right beside HMS Motorsports.
Okay.
Hendrick Motorsports. Yeah.
We will let EMS know. Okay, we got him coming out there.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Dr. Siegel, your heart just breaks about knowing the struggle he must have been in for his life at that moment. He was awake, lying on the bathroom floor, as you just heard. Was experiencing shortness of breath. It was hot. He was producing blood, coughing up blood. Thinks he's going to pass out. What more can you take away from that audio?
I would stick with my initial impression, because on top of that, the family was saying he was going to miss the Coca-Cola 600 because of a severe illness requiring hospitalization. That speaks to the pneumonia idea. But the suddenness of that call sounds more like the blood clot. If you're suddenly struggling to breathe and coughing up blood, that's the blood clot. But then the missing thing is that was he experiencing chest pain? So it's most likely going to be one of those two things, that he was developing a pneumonia, that it got worse suddenly, or that he developed a blood clot. And the suddenness of it makes me think of that.
Doc, not to say that this is the same thing, but this is very reminiscent of what happened back in 1990 when the Muppets creator, Jim Henson, had been sick for a number of weeks and was suddenly rushed to the hospital in New York City with galloping pneumonia. Was in the hospital for 15 hours and died. I mean, if this was some sort of latent infection that suddenly became fulminant and was accelerating, in a case like that, even with the best medical care, it's difficult to survive.
John, I think that's a really good comparison, because remember, if he had a sinus infection, it can actually progress to pneumonia or even a viral pneumonia, and you may not diagnose it. And even with someone like him who's world famous, you would think that people would know right away, but it can progress and you cannot get treatment and you cannot get diagnosed quickly enough. And if it was viral, there may not have been a treatment. I agree that that's top of the list.
I mean, obviously, we don't know the exact time it took emergency response to arrive there on the scene, but hearing what you did, was there a chance for survival?
Well, what an emergency response team would do, and again, I don't know how far they had to go, and we don't. Again, it depends on which of the two diagnoses it is that I'm mentioning, or a different one. But the answer is that what you try to do in that situation is put someone on a ventilator as soon as possible, and then you take over the breathing of it, and then you figure out through lung imaging what exactly is going on. That's actually very hard to do in the field. But they could do it. They could do it if they get there fast enough.
There's also some idea, Doc, that racing itself somehow exacerbated the illness that was building in his body with the sinus and lung infection. Because as you go into those high bank corners, you're pulling a number of Gs. And if you've got fluid, some sort of an infection in your lungs, that's going to push that fluid, that infection, down to the bottom of your lungs, where it's much harder to clear. And after a race, I can't remember where the race was.
This is really accurate.
Yeah,
race a
couple of weeks ago, he actually called, it was Watkins Glen, back on May 10th. He actually called his team and said, can you get the doctor to please meet me at my bus? I think I need a shot. Now, you don't know, could that be an antibiotic shot? Could it be a shot of dexamethasone to help his breathing? We don't know. But he was clearly in some distress in Watkins Glen after that race.
And not to mention the stress and the high-powered needs of the body under these kind of circumstances make it a lot more likely that an illness would progress more rapidly.
Just so sad to hear the details of the suffering that he was in those final minutes. I just want to note that you've been looking at the pictures there, obviously live, Welcome North Carolina, of folks that are leaving flowers and candy in memory of him. He is also, by the way, survived by his parents and his wife, Samantha. You've been looking at some of the pictures on the screen there. They married back in 2010. He's got two children. Son Brexton just turned 11 years old on Monday and has a 4-year-old daughter, Lennox. He leaves behind a young family, Dr. Siegel.
You know, that's the biggest tragedy of all here. Someone like him is at the center of a universe that suddenly gets, we grieve for the family. And the other point I forgot to make, I want to add, is that if he's truly feeling hot, that also goes to John's theory of pneumonia. I think pneumonia is likely and that it was progressing rapidly and it didn't get treated properly. And it's kind of a wake-up call, too, that sometimes celebrities don't get the care that you would expect. I don't know that that's the case, but I certainly grieve and pray for the family.
Yeah, just to clarify, it's not my theory. I just said that it sounds very similar to what happened with Jim Henson 36 years ago when he was mildly ill and then suddenly became exceedingly, extraordinarily, critically ill. But I mean, it could have been anything else, right? I mean, you could develop some sort of blood infection, as you pointed out. It could have been an embolism, blood clot. Could have been a lot of things.
Right. We don't know, and we don't have enough facts. We know that I'm saying that it's likely a primary lung problem. That's what. When you're coughing up blood, it's usually a primary lung problem.
Well, no doubt. Obviously, the family was in an emergency situation. Now that we've heard that 911 audio call, you know, looking back, not obviously knowing exactly what the cause of death would be, overheating. Obviously, there's a lot of things that this could be. Dr. Siegel, what do you believe are going to be the next steps in determining exactly that, based on the call and based on the emergency, the emergency call and the details that were revealed in it?
Well, generally, if a death occurs in an unexplained manner like this, you have to get the medical examiner involved to figure this out. And if it is pneumonia, it's very easy to figure out. If it's a blood clot, it's very easy to figure out. So we should get a cause of death if the family decides to release it. It may take hours, but we should be able to have it. They may have it. They may know by now. But again, you know, it doesn't have to be released publicly.
Well, it's just incredibly sad, Doc, anywhere that you look at this, and the tributes are pouring in from his fellow NASCAR drivers, ones that he was continuing to duel with and ones that he had dueled with in the past. He was the sort of guy that had great relationships with some drivers, difficult relationships with others like Dale Earnhardt Jr., but managed to patch things up over the years.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.